So thank you guys for coming back and for being here for the distribution panel that we have. My name is Jackie Dallas. I'm an actress. I'm an independent filmmaker. I'm best known for my role in Stranger Things. Let's go ahead and just introduce you guys and talk a little bit about what you do and what you're doing.
Jesus. My name is Eric Bromberg. I'm the head of business development for a new indie studio called Gunpowder and Sky, which is now actually part of the AT&T Warner Media family. And then I also run a division of that called Dust. And Dust is a science fiction focused kind of digital destination and a new brand that we've launched. That's all things kind of thought-provoking sci-fi. Yeah.
Hi, we actually have two mics, so this works too. I'm Jessica Cameron. You probably, if you were just here at the previous panel, then you know me, so this is a little bit of a repeat, but I'm a scream queen and actress turned filmmaker. I specialize in independent genre pictures, and it's something that I really love. I've acted in over 100 projects, produced 11 or 12, directed 3, and hopefully with many more to come.
Yay. In the audience, how many of you guys are filmmakers? Everyone? Yay. How many of you guys have distributed a film before? So for us newbies, do you guys want to tell us a little bit about, I know it's very complicated. We're going to have a whole hour to talk about it, but just a very quick overview of what distribution even means and entails.
Okay, so distribution is getting the film out to the widest amount of people and hopefully making your money back. Right, like that's the short term. A key caveat is, for the record, don't fucking self-distribute. I mean, let's just get that off the table. There's probably a third of you right now, based off of distribution panels I've done in the past, who are like, I'm gonna do this. No, you're not gonna fucking do it well. By the way, I swear, a lot. Don't do it. Don't waste your time. It's just not gonna happen. Take it from somebody who loves social media, and if I could save $1, I effing would. If I can't do it, you can't do it. At least not well. You get better numbers, better reach, make your money back with a legitimate company that has done this more. Also, as you guys probably realize, filmmaking is more than a full-time job. So is the distribution process. You don't have time in the day to be both. You need a company you trust with people that you adore that can help you do what they do full-time. So that's distribution, in my opinion.
Yeah. She said it.
So when you hire a distribution company, what are the services that they are promising to do for your film? Does that include like just taking it from a file that you just upload and submit to them, or is there a whole like quality process that has to go through? Is there like a vetting process? Do they get it into all the platforms? What's typical of what's expected? Do they promote for you?
Here, you say what, because I know what we do.
Oh, yeah, true.
So
that's a good way.
And then
that'll probably be how we structure it. I'll give you like the overview, and
Yeah.
he can give you specifically his company. Which, by the way, big fan of his company. So I get asked a lot about which companies you approve, and I have a detailed Google Doc, which if you don't have one, you should make it. Who you've talked to, when. I alphabetize and color code mine, and also ask every filmmaker about their experience, and then it gets transcoded into this Google Doc. So do that for everything. It will save you time. A distribution company is going to do whatever reach they have. Most distribution companies do not have, except for the big ones, anything above the big ones, so Sony, Lionsgate, etc. Most of them specialize either by region, like American, North America, or, you know, the UK, whatnot, and or by platform. So they might specialize on Hulu, Amazon, Netflix, etc. It's unlikely, unless you go to one of the big guys, that they kind of do everything. And in my experience as an independent filmmaker, it doesn't behoove you to go with a smaller company that says they do everything, because they really just want the right that if they happen to meet that one person in passing that could do a distribution deal in Australia, they want the right to sell it. But for the most part, they're not creating those bridges. So they basically have access, they own the movie for X amount of territories that they don't have connections to, which won't serve you. So ideally, as a filmmaker, your job is to get the best deal with the best company for the film that you have. And you need to weigh that into account as far as like, where do they actually do their releases? Do they have a Netflix deal? Which also, for the record, for most independent people, it's not going to help you. And Netflix is really great for reach. They're really low on the financial scale because they buy independent films for, I don't even know what it is in 2019, 2018, I believe it was $2,500 for a 3-year term. right? So I don't know about you, $2,500 after your distribution split's not going to be a lot. But everybody will see it. So there's always a trade-off. So you kind of sometimes have to pick and choose your battles. Do you want to go with the distribution company that you think is going to get the most eyes on the project? Or do you want to go to the one that's going to focus on the recoupment of your investment funds and go from there? As an independent filmmaker, here's a harsh reality, and take this to heart. It's unlikely you're going to get a minimum guarantee unless you have an A-lister in your movie. That's just life. I'm not saying it's not impossible. There absolutely are the exception to the rule. For the most part, right now, distribution companies are not giving you minimum guarantees, which is a minimum guarantee is money given up front, typically upon signing, sometimes upon the release of the film, for your movie that goes against the money they're going to pay you off of the percentage of sales that you've agreed to. Right? This used to be standard. The industry is changing. Nowadays, typically they'll do a percentage deal. Ideally, they take 25 to 35%. Keep in mind that does not include their expenses, which can be very high. And it is your job and due diligence as a filmmaker to read through the contracts, get to know them really well, take them to see a lawyer, and really negotiate your contract. If you sign a bad deal, in my humble opinion, it's as much your fault as the person who gave you the bad deal in the contract, because you should have read it. I don't fucking care. I'll throw people under the bus. Green Apple, don't sign with them. They're shitty. They have a it's a $20,000 or $30,000 non-accountable clause in their film. It literally says they take, I think it's $30,000 before you see a dime in a non-accountable reason. They're literally telling you, we're taking this money, we don't have to tell you why. So if you sign a contract that says that, guess what? You just signed a dumb effing contract. And also just don't sign with them. So, you have your own mic now.
So all of that. And I'll be specific and actually kind of a two-tiered thing of what we do to try to actually also enhance the bottom line and the exposure for the filmmakers. So on the studio side, for Gunpowder and Sky, there's a distribution company out of New York that we acquired called Film Buff. And so that might be more familiar to some of you, and that you've maybe seen their tag in the beginning. But they're not at the big level. They're also we're not at the small level. I mean, we have some output deals. We have a deal with Redbox. We have a nice deal with iTunes to kind of get the top shelf space for the stuff we put out. We also have deals with Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu.
I love Redbox deals. Side note, that's where all of you filmmakers ding, 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 ding. Redbox is fucking great for you.
Yeah, that's a gem of a... And we'll come up with more, we'll uncover. When I think about it, there's just certain ones that...
and Redbox is a deal that, so Hulu and, a lot of the platforms, right? Like the things that you can click on your TV, anybody can submit to them. But if the company has a track record, it's more likely they can go through or deal with the quality control process. But anybody in theory can submit to them. Redbox, if you don't have a connection to Redbox, you're not getting in, right? So these smaller companies that have never done a deal to Redbox, they might tell you as an independent film, oh yeah, we'll pitch it to Redbox. They don't know anybody there. If they did, they'd have films. Redbox is really selective about who they work with, and in my opinion, it speaks very highly of companies that have those inroads.
Yeah. And we also have a lot of international distribution deals too. So and there's a lot of truth that you tend to be a specialist in a certain territory, but we have deals everywhere in every single country. Sometimes if we feel like we need some help, we also can talk to local sales agents, and they also help, and that's the whole thing. But we really try to do right by our filmmakers, and we throw our weight around because we have 1,700 films in our library that we control. So there's also a bulk kind of push where some countries just need content. I mean, and as they kind of catch up and third world becomes more like first world in the media, they just say, oh, we need 100 hours for our channel. And so we can also use that to say, well, we have 100 hours or 1,000 hours, whatever. And so we can kind of negotiate better deals. So not to recover everything that was already said, but so one thing we do as far as kind of getting the films out there are the other company, the division I run called Dust. We've been doing deals where we say, okay, we have over 2 million followers on our Facebook channel, and about to have 1 million followers on our YouTube, and we have our own Roku channel, and we're about to launch, and we're all on Sinclair and all these different homes. And so we'll do a deal and say, let us kind of promote it through kind of social and kind of build and cultivate a community around this particular film, even if it's a little bit, even if it makes it stand up a little bit above kind of the rest of the crowd, and then take it to these different distribution platforms and have a little bit of edge and kind of say, okay, like we know that if we take it to you, Redbox or whomever or Hulu, like some of this audience will convert and come with it. And so that's something that we kind of, I launched this division 2 years ago, and it's been going well. And we just did that with our very first feature film that we got last year at South by Southwest called Prospect. And that's a bit different. It stars Pedro Pascal, who's kind of an up-and-coming star from Game of Thrones and Narcos, and it has Jay Duplass, who's kind of like indie, like gold standard. But they went with us, and I talked to the filmmakers and to Pedro and Jay and everyone involved. So instead of going to like Sony or even one of the bigger ones, and then where they would still kind of shotgun it out because it's a smaller indie and that they have their deal for, they said, well, okay, we'll go with you, because I was like, we'll make it our everything, and we'll get all of the kind of leverage we can from the community that we've built, and then we'll go take that deal and go get it. And we did that, and so we did, and then we're getting U.S. distribution in the U.S. with Hulu, and with Netflix for the rest of the world, and with certain commitments of it'll be X amount of money and X amount of promotion. So I don't know if that's helpful. Other than that, any way that you can, the more you can do ahead of time, I guess I would say, whether if it's sci-fi through us, or we have a horror division as well called Alter, or even if it's a rom-com or anything, it's like try to kind of find the niche community that already exists and kind of like build a bit of a buzz around it, and then with whoever you end up going with, or whoever says, yeah, I want to distribute this, I can help you do it for our fee, of course. You're just going to get a better deal no matter what if you're able to do it.
I was going to say, I think that's so important to note, and I think your company is one of the few ones that still do marketing and promotion. Most will charge you a fee for marketing. A lot of companies don't do anything now. Even companies that I really like will charge you a marketing company, and they just put it out on the platforms. So the fact that you actually do the work is fantastic, but I also think that should come with a caveat. As filmmakers, I believe that all of us are still responsible for doing it ourselves as well. Because here's the thing, if you luck out and you get that distributor who's going to market and push your film as well, it's even better if you're doing it already also, right? Like if you can bring an extra 500, 5,000, 50,000 eyes to a project, that's great. If they can bring X amount on their table, that's better. But I see a lot of filmmakers making what I think is a pretty common mistake, which is just relying on other people to do the marketing and promotion for them. And that's a big risk because you're counting on other people to do the job. And depending on the company you go with, it may or may not happen. Yeah. There are a lot of companies that just push it out on their platforms, and they might push it to their Facebook page, which has low reach and or no engagement.
Yeah, and it's all like DIY now as far as, we're not doing anything magical compared to what anybody can go personally do. In the sense of, it's like when we got Prospect, for example, it's still like us emailing the star and saying, hey, can you post this on Twitter? And hey, we made these assets, and can you put this up? And we cut different trailers for the filmmakers. Like here's a 10-second one for Instagram, here's a 30-second one, here's a 60, here's a 90, and it's nothing that a filmmaker couldn't do on their own. And of the stuff we work on, the ones who are most involved, actually even just this morning, like before coming here, we got a digital web series out of Australia, and it's really great, and it's 5 episodes, 10 minutes each, and we're going to put it up and then kind of really just push it hard. But they've created a poster for it that looks incredible, like whoever did it, and they created a trailer and it looks awesome. So we're going to use that as part of the social promotion. And then ideally, it would become almost like a pilot, like a backdoor pilot, when it all comes together as a 50-minute. And then we're going to go kind of shop that. And we're trying to do that, and so is everyone else. There's nothing that makes us like more special, other than just maybe having more relationships and having an infrastructure. But it's it's kind of like the more they're handing to us. If you think, it just makes total sense, right? It's like, oh, okay, yeah, it makes our job easier. Great. Now we have these things, and we'll kind of put them into the system and go forward with that.
I think so. As a distribution company, What kind of things do you look for in an indie project that gets submitted to you? Like, what are some things that indie filmmakers can think about to help their project gain distribution, even from the pre-production stages, whether it's, do we need to cast an A-lister, or do we need to cast name talent, or do we need to have at least this much of a budget, just et cetera, et cetera. What are some things that would help?
I mean, let's see. So, I mean, we still, maybe we're old school like this. I mean, a lot of the stuff we get is at festivals. Because it's like there has to be filters to, for any sort of submission. And then, if it's someone or through a friend or whatever, I mean, kind of like anything.
You'd be inundated otherwise.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So,
I mean, I just got back from South by Southwest 2 days ago, but, and there's different, I'll be at Tribeca. I mean, so we cover the big ones. We cover, at like Fantastic Fest and those. So I don't know if there's like I don't think definitely conceptually, there's nothing I could say for. I mean, you could say, if it's big concept or whatever, but whatever your project is, you already love it. You decided that it's great, and so I don't want to steer the creative in that way. I think that I would just say definitely. I'm sure this goes without saying, but cover the festival circuit as far as submissions. Doesn't have to, and not just the big ones. It's not like I didn't get into Sundance, and so now there's nothing else to do. I mean, we have somebody on behalf of our company at so many festivals. I mean, there's one called Future Gate in Prague that just happened, and we sent someone there. I mean, and if we don't have someone there, we watch it. I mean, and for me, I was at the Boston Sci-Fi Festival 3 weeks ago, which was only sci-fi because that's my focus. But so I would say it's not so much like what to think about. As far, yes, if you can cast an A-lister, of course you will, but it's assuming that can happen. I think, you're going to make the best movie you can at the budget you can make it. But I think as far as the main thing is trying to get on the radar, in front of different distribution companies. And it seems kind of basic, but.
So reputable laurels, basically.
Reputable laurels. And it can be, and anytime you have that, or if let's say it does come in and it's not through the festival, but we see, it played it here, and here. I mean, that matters. I mean, whether, it's Palm Springs or, some small thing. I mean, it's just kind of, it's whatever helps it stand out, for us. In the same way, it's how we try to then help, once we decide we want to get behind it, how do we then have this stand out from the pack? So it's, does that make sense?
Yeah.
I also just want to add a caveat. Something I see as an actor a lot is, you see I do this a lot. That being said, filmmakers often think that they can slack off on the first couple minutes of the film for whatever reason. I've noticed this trend. Oh, don't worry, it's going to get better. I know the opening's not very good, it gets better. Here's the reality. Many distribution companies, if they put the film in and they're not liking it or it doesn't look the best in the first 5 minutes, they're not going to watch to minute 50 to see if it gets better. And also, side note, neither is your audience on any of the platforms for the most part. They're going to click off. So this whole idea of, but no, Jessica, the third act is so good. No, I'm going to walk out of the theater. I'm never going to see it either. So really keep that in mind, because I think that it's really important to understand also that you kind of need to make the best quality film that you can across the board, but the opening is so very important, because if everybody's not connected to it, if it doesn't show the film as a whole, the quality, etc., it's not going to be as strong. So keep that in mind. I think that that's something that often gets neglected.
Any big differences between feature films, short films, web series, like how you consider them? Is there a bigger market for some than others?
The biggest market for sure, obviously, is features, but we have been trying to lean in, and that's actually what Dust, the sci-fi division, has been predicated on, which is that we launched it with short films only. And so I've gone around and been licensing sci-fi shorts that exist out in the world from wherever we find it, Vimeo, YouTube, people's master's thesis, some proof of concept they shot, whatever, recently or 10 years ago. And then we put out 2 a week. Every single week, and now we have 260 shorts. And what's been really nice, and what I'm hoping starts to happen, and already is happening, is that they actually serve as proof of concepts for the larger version to help get funding, whether we come in with that money or someone else. So Prospect is an example of that. It was a short by first-time filmmakers in the woods, about an hour outside of Seattle. and did not have a star at the time, and then through being kind of pushed on different platforms, got the attraction of financiers, and we wanted to finance it, and they already had the money, so I said, okay, I'll just buy it after it's made, and then did that. So, but yeah, that's kind of I'm starting to see that market evolve and develop more, because I think people have been making shorts for a long time, and then it's like, well, what do I do now with my short? And I think just recently it's finally at a place because the streaming platforms are agnostic to the runtime. It had to be before, I had to have it at 22 or 44 with commercials, whatever. And now that's all changing. And so, as far as feature film is going to be best bang for buck, as far as, because there's still a formalized packaging of what your film is. That's between whatever 80 and 180 minutes or whatever. But I would say it's like if you more and more I'm seeing the short film thing that has been happening for decades at universities and out in school that a lot of times didn't lead to the next thing. It is now leading to the next thing. I can tell you a dozen filmmakers who have made shorts that are now big filmmakers based on those shorts.
That's really good to hear, because I feel like we all start with making shorts because they're easier, they're cheaper, less risk. It's nice that there's more and more platforms out there. Speaking of platforms, do you guys have preferences on what are some of the big differences between all the different platforms? Like iTunes versus Netflix versus on-demand versus etc. What are your thoughts on that, on both sides, from the artist side and from the distribution side?
Well, for me, I'm always trying to get the most reach I actually can. So for me, when I look at distribution deals, it's like who is going to approach all of them, but where are these distributors' films actively playing, right? If you tell me that you can get it to Hulu, Netflix, and Redbox, but you don't have any films on those platforms or in the Redbox, then you can't. Like, that's a reality. Don't get me wrong. Once in a blue moon it could happen. It's unlikely. For me, the biggest thing that I try to avoid is big box retailers. So we were talking about this earlier. Actually in Walmart is not very helpful for most indies because most distributors have what we call a two-way deal on a big box retailer. So I know we all want to see our film for sale on an actual store shelf, but Walmart typically, and I'm going to simplify this, it's a little bit more complicated, but not drastically. How retailers work when you have a two-way deal, it basically says that their deal is contractual to you, well, not you, but the distributor purchasing back the unsold units. As an independent film without a multi-million-dollar marketing spend, it's unlikely that you're going to supersede 60% of the units. It's just unlikely. More likely than not, 60% is going to go unsold. You're going to have to buy those units back. If that wasn't bad enough, you also have to reimburse Walmart for every step of the way. And these large retailers have a very complicated system that works for them as far as how they get the goods to the store. So, for example, your distributor will ship the units to a location. That location gets divided up by region. Then it gets divided up at another location for A, B, or C level store because they're all getting a different amount. And then it gets shipped to that California, to the state, and then it gets shipped to the store. You have to reimburse for every step of the way for unsold units if it's a two-way deal. And most independent films that don't have an A-list star, that's what Walmart will offer you. And I've seen filmmakers really lose the profits on their films by insisting on a two-way deal at a big box retailer, mainly out of vanity. They wanted their film to be purchased. So I'm really cautious on that because for me, I'm always looking at the big picture. The most important thing is that my films recoup their money, and then I wanted to get it in front of as many people as humanly possible. So that being said, if you can get a one-way deal, it's great. A one-way deal means that they're just going to purchase the units outright. They buy X amount. They either sell them or they liquidate them or they financially are in charge of destroying them. But again, it's very rare. So caution on that. And then second for me is Redbox, I think is really lucrative for independent films. They're really great, even though I hate the cover art that they love. I don't know if you've noticed. Redbox always picks the worst cover art. Every time I have a movie in Redbox, I'm I know they're going to pick the worst one. Gosh darn it. If I have if I present 5 pieces of artwork and the ones I'm oh, this is trash, they're going to love it. that's the one they're picking. That being said, it works for them. I think that they're really independent filmmaker friendly, and I really like them as well. And then after that, it's about, for me, ideally Hulu over Netflix, because Hulu, I find, you make more money off of Hulu typically. So I'm not against Netflix, but for me, Netflix is preferably the final point. Like after you've done everything else, then you put it for mass consumption on Netflix, because they're making the least amount of money. It's going to see the most amount of people.
That's true, because even though it's subscription based, we all kind of, once we pay that subscription each month, we kind of think like, oh, we're watching all these movies for free. So if you can get it for free, then why would you pay for it elsewhere, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. I think there's just one thing to tie into that too. I mean, it's very accurate, and that's like only when you've been in the trenches do you like find out what she just talked about. So it's valuable information. Speaking of kind of cover art, I mean, and how it's funny how bad Redbox is because of how important it actually is. Because you think about those people that are just scrolling and then you see something, like, that's interesting. So we did a movie a couple of years ago called The Little Hours with Dave Franco and Aubrey Plaza and Alison Brie, John C. Reilly, and like all these huge stars. And like, I was like, somehow like the Redbox cover didn't feature anybody. I mean, it's like, wait, like that always is like the biggest thing with stars we've ever had. I mean, it's like, this is our main thing. You gotta like have everybody like in one big poster, or at least have like one, or Aubrey Plaza herself, because she's so big. So, but that actually, and then with iTunes, we had more control over that, and that ended up being a breakout success for us, almost like unexpectedly, because we bought the movie for very little money. So it's also, I think it's your question of where, iTunes is still, even though I don't know how much longer that will last, where you have like the individual purchase, to a point of purchase or a rental for $4 or whatever, because you're kind of like, or I can wait and then I just get it on Hulu or on, but people still like, kind of buying something to watch right then and there. And somehow there's like a gratification where they don't even have to like go into and find and like dig through 1,000 titles to get to something, which is what Netflix is, every time. And somehow it's they present it nicely and it's on there. So, our deal with iTunes and other distributors like us, I mean, ends up being pretty valuable for the filmmaker, and they get pretty generous terms as far as like what the share is. So that can end up being an unexpectedly good one. So I would just say with anyone, if you guys are fortunate enough you're at a place and you're talking to different distributors, definitely try to see if there's anything you're taking away, what the Redbox deal looks like and what the iTunes deal looks like, because once it gets downstream to the SVODs and even to the AVODs and even to the pay TV, I mean, you don't end up seeing much of that money because and the bigger Netflix and Amazon and pretty soon Apple get, then they have more leverage to $2,500 for a deal with Netflix isn't great.
That's nothing.
So
you can't make a film for that.
I have a quick question. For you, how important is behind the scenes feature? Because I know some distributor companies really appreciate them and other ones don't. So things that can be bundled, because I believe on iTunes you can do a bundle, right, where you get X amount of attributes, because that's what I've been told, but again, I haven't really looked. I always do a lot of behind the scenes. By the way, y'all have phones, most of them shoot 4K or at least a resolution. If you guys don't have behind the scenes on your movies, figure it out. Like, you should figure out some extra stuff that you can do, because again, for me, I always use that as a selling feature, and it's worked really well, because you can actually use that to increase your sales on certain platforms over others. So people might rather see it on Hulu where it's free, my movie, or they might want to pay, $3.99 on iTunes because the, drinking game commentary is a fun little add-on. But for me as a filmmaker, I really love doing that. But I was curious from you as a distributor, how important is it?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, because it is important. Again, it's like whatever differentiates the product, whatever differentiates the film, and that's one part of it, right? So it depends. So for my specialty being sci-fi, behind the scenes stuff becomes really essential, because a lot of our audience really wants to know how that particular effect happened, whether it's a visual effect, was it done practically, was it done on a green screen, and so for that audience, it's like, yeah, they're here to watch the film, but they also really want to know, like, how was this pulled off, and I think horror to some extent is the same, but I know for sure, at least with this type of audience, like, so we always ask our filmmakers, even from the short film side, where we have them submit and we do the whole kind of social community first, as we like kind of present it as a proof of concept. We always say, is there behind the scenes stuff that you can send, either in key art and anything that is like special. And I would say especially for science fiction, but also there's a streaming site called Passionflix, and it's all romance films. It's almost like Lifetime movies, but sometimes steamier, kind of like 50 Shades of Grey. And it's like, and you pay $6 a month, and they have a real following, and or Filmstruck, which they're whatever version it is right now, but they'd say, oh, I want to really know, so anybody who's paying for a niche subscription service, they're kind of signaling that they're pretty diehard about that particular genre. And so if you have a particular genre of film and you say, oh, here's also the behind the scenes and the how to and where this could go and commentary and anything else, it does. It helps. That's a good point.
So that's good advice. That's good to just turn off. Hello? So that's good advice. It's like kind of almost answers one of the earlier questions about what a filmmaker can do to try and make their film more packageable, more distributable, is like getting the behind the scenes, getting special effects stuff, getting commentaries, interviews, etc. So adding to that. Is there any questions? Yes.
So if you had somebody that didn't have a following and they're looking, they've got this great film, maybe a couple of names that you may know, who, like, on your list of, let's say, like, Redbox, iTunes, Google Play, like, what would you look for as far as the platforms that are just generically, because of the platform's audience and the way that their stuff is set up, that's going to get you the most money back, for a film that, like, the people don't have a huge following, so they're like really relying on the distributor to get that payback.
We'll go. I guess it's not a great answer, but it depends on the film, because we'll kind of we'll huddle up and say, where do we think this could play? Where do we think this has? And it could be with, like, we do a TV deal with Charter or like Cox Communication or Altus. It's like there's no stone unturned, and so everyone knows. You say Hulu, Netflix, Amazon, and then you go, okay, iTunes and Redbox and Google Play, and that makes sense. But we also, we talk to airlines, because to get short films on there and feature films, we talk to prison systems. We cover, what do you call it, on boats, cruise lines. And so I guess we don't count on someone else's following. We just kind of come up with a plan. Obviously it does help. And I was saying, like, whatever you can do to, whether it's behind the scenes or your own marketing or your own push. But I don't know if we look at it first by saying which platform wants this, with the exception of horror, which we know that Netflix wants. I flip horror all day, because it turns out that for Netflix, kind of the best known horror film and the least known horror film almost have the same amount of watch on the streams.
That's like a one pay thing. Like, they don't do it per play.
No, that's a one pay.
I was gonna say, can you get me more than $2,500? Damn it!
Sometimes now it's almost the brand that comes. So we did the old Blumhouse, and we did 6 pictures with them, and then we sold them all to Netflix, sight unseen. So because they just said, oh yeah, well, it's Blumhouse, and it's and you made it for this, and we think it's worth a certain. They don't share any data, so you don't even know what the value is to them. You just know they want it, so you're kind of having like a blind negotiation. And that goes all the way through. It's like, even if you got a second season on a show, you try to renegotiate, but you don't really know, like, how well did it do? How bad do they want a second season? Is it real bad? So a lot of the stuff is a data-driven question. But But we just, as far as our marketing is, how do we do this? We just try to come up with a plan. I wish I had a better answer, but it's like, we did a documentary, one of our bigger successes a few years back, called Senna, and it was an F1 racer out of Brazil. And so that in that world, this guy was like the guy. I mean, he was one of the best ever. So then the entire campaign was around how do we tap into the racing community, the F1 community. It's probably more international than it ever would be in the U.S. So we kind of worked backwards from there based on the film. Right. And so I could, depending on, we did a documentary last year about the guy who created Herbalife. And it's kind of, is he a genius or a huge con artist, and it was kind of, and so then, so you say, okay, and what could we do to try to make this stand out? And maybe that's on iTunes as a one-off, or, elsewhere, is there any other place to showcase this? Is there, so is that help at all, or is that what we do?
Okay, so piggybacking on the Blumhouse deal, so like if you have like you package films for Blumhouse and they kind of sight unseen, I would imagine they're going to give you more than $2,500 a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're buying a name though, so it's not a good comparable to a low budget indie without a name. Right, when you're buying a Blumhouse project, it's typically $1 to $3 million. They typically do have a name and or faces in it, and you're buying the Blumhouse brand. I mean, I don't mean to overstep,
yeah,
but
that's what, yeah.
So it's not a good comparable between I'm an independent filmmaker, I don't have an established international brand, I haven't made a couple billion, not Paranormal Activity, which Blumhouse produced, last I checked was at $950 million. So if you don't have that kind of stuff behind you, it's not fair to compare your work to them. Or like as far as like the dealer reach.
Right, okay, so basically, Netflix is like, it's you never know what you're going to get until you start talking to Netflix kind of thing.
Yeah, but with us, we have a better leg to stand on because we can sell in bulk, or because we can say, buy these from us, and the next one will go to you first, and it's going to have Jake Gyllenhaal or something. I mean, and that's why, people come to companies like us. Is just how much leverage do you have walking in. And that's it. And we're but we sit in a unique position at my company, and it worries me even just seeing at Sundance, which just happened, and in South by last week, which is different than before, which is that sometimes we would come in and buy a film, let's say for $50,000 as an MG, which you was talking about before, and then do marketing and kind of get it into some other platforms, maybe even get it in some more festivals, get it exposure, start to get a buzz, and then we would then sell it to Netflix, let's say for $300,000, I don't know. Or no, actually, say $300,000. And now Netflix will just show up and say, all right, we'll take all that off the table for $25,000, let's say. And you go, man, that's not bad. Like, now I get to be on Netflix, and that's better than the $2,500 deal I heard about. And but it's not 50, and it's definitely not 300, which is what we end up getting. If you kind of can give it some love and care and build it up. And so that's starting to happen more and more. Amazon as well did that because they're realizing they need volume. And so are these new Warner Media coming up and starting to do that. Anyways, I don't know. I just think it's starting to squeeze down at the bottom. And so, again, more reason to try to figure out how to have your film feel different and be kind of loud in the marketplace.
I like how you brought up all the different avenues where you pitch the films to, like prison systems or airplanes. Like I never, as an independent filmmaker, would have even thought to like approach that, right? Let's talk money. How much should an indie filmmaker budget in for distribution? How much of that, like for a short film, let's say a short film has an X number dollar budget, right? Cheap. Versus a feature film that, let's say it's under 100K. What is it, like a percentage? Is it a flat? Is it a commission-based sort of thing? What's a typical deal that an indie filmmaker can expect? Okay, so
I'll kick this off and tell you based off my experience. I usually try and have at least $5,000 reserved for distribution. Typically, I will push back on E&O, which is your errors and omissions insurance, and request that the distributor buy that, pay for that. Keep in mind, when I say pay for that, you're paying for that in the end. It's going to come off the profits that you make. But typically, when they buy them in bulk for X amount of movies, they get E&O insurance at a better rate. rate than I can get a single, or even as somebody who has produced, a fair amount of films, they can still get it cheaper because they're doing more than me. So I push back on E&O insurance, which if you have to pay for it, it's going to be typically $2,500 to $3,500. But then you've got your deliverables and the cost of making it. The better the distribution company, the more places they're pushing out to, the more expensive the deliverables are going to be. I've had to spend literally over $1,000 just on hard drives to deliver all of the assets in the different formats to reach the different regions. But again, the smaller companies, you can get away with literally just like one drive and like a file of your film and a copy of the cover art. So it really does depend upon what you're doing and who you're doing it with. But I think err on the side of caution, have $5,000. That's why if you do get a great deal, and they are making sure that you have to pay upfront at your own expense for the E&O insurance, that you're not losing that deal because you can't do it. And understanding like you're paying for E&O insurance one way or the other. It's not worth losing a deal if you don't have it, in my humble opinion, which is why I always plan to have it upfront. Also understand that there's a cost of getting all of these formatting. If you're doing it through a post house, it can be literally $20,000. If you're doing it through a post-production supervisor, it's probably going to be a lot less. So figuring out how you can work within the budget you have and not over expending the money that you have access to, depending upon the film and the requirements.
Yeah, and that's detailed and accurate. And as far as with the distributor, so we only work on commission as far as what the piece we take. You don't pay us to go distribute your film. So it's 15, 20, 25, 30%. Back to the whole, what deal do you negotiate? And we've been flexible in whatever we do. Depending on, do we like the filmmaker? Do we want their next thing too? Something we always consider. Maybe this film isn't going to break the bank, but if we believe in that filmmaker, we also will say, let us distribute it, and then we'll get behind your next thing too, which I think is always what you want to try to look for. Is not just the thing you have, but your next one. But yeah, I would say, $5,000 is, you don't know, because you don't know what's going to happen, but no one's going to kind of work harder for your film than you are. So,
right.
I think you have to put some aside.
I also have an extra thing. I also think it's really important for you to try to plan your marketing and push. I think a lot of filmmakers don't do this. The 2 weeks before your release and the first 2 weeks of your release, you should allot your schedule. If you work a day job, take vacation days. Figure it out to work as much and as hard on promoting your film as possible. Ideally, you're doing it while your distributor is doing it as well. But either way, at least you'll be doing it, and really pushing to make sure that everybody sees it. If you can get 100 reviews, that's great. If you can get 200, even better. The more, the merrier when it comes to marketing and promotion upon the point of your film being released. And again, that may be, if you don't want to do that, also that would be an additional expense, right? If you're paying someone to do that, and understand that's something that you need to either do or pay for, and budget accordingly, either with your time or funds.
We're down to one mic, guys, sorry. That's really good to know, because I feel like a lot of indie filmmakers think of distribution as that's a future me problem. So they don't necessarily take that kind of money into account. They don't budget for it. And then they end up with a product that they don't have any way of getting out there. So that's really good to know. What would you say is this is a totally loaded question. What percentage of filmmakers do you think actually recoup the cost of the film, make their money back? And I know there's a point where exposure does count for something. If you're starting out, and maybe sometimes getting more eyes on it is what you're after. But yeah, financially speaking, what do you think?
You would.
Well, I assume. So for the record, he's been really modest. I actually think his company is really, really great, and I would consider them one of the big guys. So let's just keep that on the table. As far as film that recoup their budget, here's a sad reality. Somewhere I would assume around 60% of all independent films that go to camera don't ever get finished or seen. That might be off. There's no hard numbers, right? Because there's no database. Based upon the 100+ films that I have worked on, 50 to 60% never see the light of day. So they don't even have a chance in hell of recouping their budget back because they're not ever getting done or seen. Then you get into the ones that do. Of those ones that do, I would say fewer than 10% get distribution or a decent distribution deal, right? And then of those 10%, I would say maybe 10% of that. So you get down to like 1% of movies effectively that recoup their budget back. But I also see a lot of really fixable mistakes along the way. You know, like you have to have a budget. You need to stick to it. You need to budget for your distribution and your post-production. By the way, post-production is going to happen whether you want to save the money for it or not. It'll just matter on whether or not you finish your film. So there's a lot of things that often filmmakers make the mistake of doing that puts them in a position where these things happen. So it's not all poor me, everyone's out to get me, I did nothing wrong. No, a lot of the time there's a lot that was done incorrectly that could be improved upon. So take this as something that should inspire you to work harder and smarter and better, and not decide, I can't do this, it can't be done. Because it absolutely can be done. And working with quality companies that have a track record, companies that you can look and see, okay, everything that he said is factually true. You can actually go and check out their YouTube page. You can go and check this out. You can go and see the movies that they've pitched, see the movies that they represent, find out where did they go. Doing your homework is going to be endlessly helpful, which is where color-coded, alphabetized Google Docs, which if you have a Gmail, you all have access, is going to save your life. My film festival one is 300 pages, for the record, because it literally has like who's given, where I played, who's done what, who do I know, who knows me, who emailed me, who liked me, who tweeted me, like everything. Distribution one is over 100 pages. Press is 300. You know, they will save your life, because as a filmmaker, you can't memorize everything, everyone. You're not going to be like, oh yeah, we met this wonderful man at this panel for first glance in 3 years when your film is done. But if you go home, start your Google Doc, put his name down, put his company down, where you heard him speak, what he said, what you thought about him, do your homework, check the website, check their YouTube channel, and subscribe, by the way. Check their social media, pay attention to the films that they've picked up. When you need that resource, you will have a place to go back and get it, and it's going to be endlessly helpful. So really, really take ownership of that. It will help you.
Then you should just consult. Why start from scratch? Just go to her, because it's that kind of like trench warfare. So. And it's tough. I mean, those numbers are accurate. So, but for real, like start consulting type situation.
It's a good reminder. You know, we as artists get caught up with the art of it, but at the end of the day, it's a business, right? So, not just the finance part of it, but the networking and the connections. Because in this industry, a lot of times it really is kind of boils down to who you know or what kind of interactions you've had in the past, what your reputation is, how it suits you. I think we have time for maybe one question. If there's any questions in the audience. Yay, nay? No? All right. Oh, yes.
About short film acquisition, because it seems like you guys are pumping those out possibly through Duster. Is there a range where you've seen, I mean, I'm sure it can be as low as 0, but is there a high range so far, like for genre films or sci-fi, effects-driven stuff, that you guys, or that you see the industry purchasing option rights or distribution rights for those shorts?
For the distribution rights, I'll tell you right now, I pay about $1,000. It's not much, but it's more to say that we commit to marketing, and this is for specifically again just for sci-fi and then now horror, and we'll be launching a music division in the summer for the same type of thing, and we've been doing shorts in the music world and films as well. And then the option is whatever you can get. I mean, we've paid small amounts, we've paid decent amounts. And for us, it's really about, like, okay, we believe in this and we take a ride with us. When you go on the journey, we think that, you know, this 5-minute or 8-minute short or whatever has the kernel of an idea that's huge. And we think it's a future, maybe, you know, even a TV series. And the value add we can do is say, okay, we'll go get, you know, a fancy pants writer or a big, you know, other name, you know, to start a package, because that's more of our specialty, and that's also where we feel that you get the big deals, is if you got to have elements. I mean, that's how we see it. You don't have to, and there's breakouts all the time on things that don't, but for us, it's like, okay, let's try to attach someone a value. But it depends. We did a horror movie called Summer of '84. Ended up getting into Sundance last year, and you know, had like one of the guys in Mad Men and you know, a couple kids, and it was directed by this directing team called RKSS that did a film called Turbo Kid, Yeah, they did a short that we optioned and said that we think this is great. Let's turn it into a feature, and it was on the script was on something called the blood list, which is like that's another thing too. Is where as you start to put things together, there's these different contests for the script stuff in addition, before it's at a festival. So it had kind of enough things, and we just said we believe in it, and if we can do it at this price, in this state with these tax credits and et cetera, and we did. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
Can we squeeze in one more question? I think I saw you there.
Excuse my English because I'm Spanish. In your opinion, how important is distribution in Blu-rays and DVDs comparing to other forms of distribution like Netflix or? Because I think in the last years is less important, but personally I love.
So basically for those of you who couldn't hear that, he's asking how important is physical copy release compared to online digital, right? So I think it depends on what you have. I think for genre, it's still really relative because genre fans, I don't know if you're aware, there's a horror convention every weekend, usually multiple. They love to buy hard copy things. So I think there's a very real component. I have to assume that for a rom-com, it's probably lesser so. So I think it depends on what you have. I still think, again, like when you have your film finished and you go to distribution companies, you weigh where do they get a release, and it's kind of like, well, this person can do Comcast and Hulu and Redbox. Well, this person can do Comcast, Hulu, Redbox, and they're doing physical copy. Okay, go with that guy. They've got more things. Right? It's assuming they're both reputable. So for me, it's sort of like an overall picture. I still think physical media has a place. It is decreasing depending on the genre that you make. And if you get, let's just say you have a great deal and somebody's like, we can get you a, $150,000 Redbox deal, but we aren't bothering with a physical component. Keep in mind, you as a filmmaker are still in the position to say, okay, awesome. Are you open to me keeping the physical rights, and or do you work with another company? A lot of the time, these companies that focus on VOD, such as like Gravitas, for example, came to my mind. They typically they're starting to do physical as of 2019. Up until now, they didn't. Their partner, MBD Entertainment, did the Blu-rays and the DVDs. So they would either push it to MBD, at which point they would rep it, or they would allow you to keep the rights. So if you do have an opportunity where, again, you want to go with that company, but they don't do it, ask to see if you can't keep the rights, to see if you can give them to somebody else, because getting 5,000 more copies sold is 5,000 more copies sold. That's more likely that you're going to get hired from it, you're going to recoup the money back from it, people are going to get hired from being seen in it or being involved with it. So I try to look at it objectively, the best reach for the film, however you can break it down.
All right, guys, that is the end of our panel. Thank you so much. Yay!